Equinox, the frame that is basically two whole-ish frames in one, and honestly a very good utility frame while dealing insane amounts of damage. The only issue with Equinox is she has quite the learning curve, but once you understand her, she is one of the strongest frames out there and can be extremely versatile. This video was requested by Joshua as he is a tier 3 sub. This was his video request, so a huge thank you Joshua for your generous donations and ongoing support. This frame is a tedious one in the beginning to understand because she has two sides. She has a day form which is focused on a more offensive playstyle. The day form has pants, and then she has the night form which is focused on a more defensive support playstyle. The night form has skirts. The best way to remember is day form, pants, night form, skirts. Just know that this is for the prime skin and the other skins have different versions. With that in mind, Equinox has two sides of each ability. Her passive is Equilibrium at rank 0 basically, which is nice I guess. If you pair this with a max rank Equilibrium, you get an extra 10% with her passive. Her first ability is Metamorphosis, which switches her from day to night form. It is worth noting that changing your emissive color to a light color will automatically put you in the day form when you start a mission, and likewise for dark colors puts you in the night form. When you switch forms, you get a buff depending on the form you go to. Night form gives you extra armor and shields that decays over the duration. Day form gives you extra weapon damage and extra movement speed that also decays slowly over the duration of the ability. Both of these buffs are affected by ability strength, and the duration is affected by ability duration. Metamorphosis has an augment called Duality, which causes Equinox to split the other half and creates a spectre that does a large amount of damage. Increasing ability duration will make the spectre last longer, and the spectre will only use the weapon you have equipped and won't cycle your weapons. Now this is where you need to follow along carefully. All of her abilities have two sides. Day has its own abilities and night has its own abilities as well. Her second ability is Rest and Rage. Rest is night form, which puts her enemies to sleep. The enemies will stay asleep until the duration runs out or their health reaches up to 80% of their current values. Enemies that are asleep are susceptible to stealth damage multipliers and melee finisher attacks. Rage is day form, which enrages enemies. These enemies receive 50% more damage from all sources and get a 20% movement and attack speed bonus. So it's damage, vulnerability, and basically a Nova speed up in a sense. These numbers are affected by ability strength. You can see an aura around them when you cast Rage on them, and then you can see tethers when you cast Rest on them. Rest and Rage has an augment called Calm and Frenzy. This augment allows you to spread the effect to nearby enemies when you kill an enemy affected by the debuff. So whether they are asleep or enraged, killing an enemy affected by that will spread it to nearby enemies within 5 meters. Adding ability range will increase the range of this augment. Her third ability is Pacify and Provoke. This ability is a channeled ability for both night and day. Pacify is nighttime, which gives you damage reduction. However, the damage reduction is a weird one here. The further you are from the enemy, the more damage they do. There is a whole bunch of maths behind this ability, but I don't want to bore you with all of it, so just know that the damage reduction goes up to 80%, and the further you are away, the more damage they do. The closer you are, the less damage they do. Here is a screenshot from the wiki which explains all of the maths there. Provoke is the day version, and Provoke gives you and your allies ability strength in an aura. This is a nice offensive support ability buffing everyone's abilities including yourself. This is affected by strength and can go up to 50%. As her third ability is a channel ability, ability duration will decrease the drain of this ability. Pacify and Provoke has an augment called Peaceful Provocation, which is actually an amazing augment. For nighttime, which is Pacify, the damage done to Equinox and her allies is turned into an aura that slows enemies up to 80%. Provoke, which is the day version, increases your ability strength of you and your allies up to 80%, which is a very hefty strength boost. Now let's move on to her fourth ability, and this one is my favorite, Mend and Maim. Her fourth ability is also a channeled ability, and Mend is the nighttime version. Mend is an insanely OP support ability. It's an aura that replenishes shields per enemy killed for you and your allies. The shields given per kill is affected by strength, of course. 75% of the damage dealt to enemy shields and health while Mend is active will be accumulated while the enemies are within the aura radius. The damage accumulation only occurs when the enemy is killed though. When you deactivate Mend, all of the stored damage is evenly distributed to shields and health of Equinox and her allies within range, potentially doing a full team-wide heal to max, if they are in range of course. Mend also gives you overshields as well, and it will also favor healing your health first before giving you shields, and this ability also affects your companions, defense objects, and arbitration defense operatives. Now Maim is the day version, which makes Equinox an absolutely insane nuke. Insane levels of nuking. When you cast Maim in day form, enemies are affected by a slash proc in range of the aura. This slash proc will last 6 seconds and will stun them. Bear in mind that you cannot reapply the slash proc to the same enemy unless you deactivate and activate the ability again. Maim accumulates 75% of the damage dealt to enemies while they are in the aura. As you can see here, as I kill the enemy, the damage starts accumulating. When you deactivate it, it sends out a burst of slash damage to all of the enemies in the radius of the aura. The damage is lowered with distance. However, it is worth noting that the damage dealt is affected by enemy defenses. So pairing Equinox with a armor stripping ability quite literally allows Equinox to nuke with millions of damage. On top of that, putting viral procs on further increases this damage. This makes Equinox stupidly strong when it comes to nuking at high level content. Mend and Maim also has an augment called Energy Transfer, which makes Equinox extremely versatile. What Energy Transfer does is allows you to keep Mend and Maim casted while changing sides with Metamorphosis. Before, you wouldn't be able to do that. If you switch the side, you would lose whichever aura you had activated. So if you cast Maim, go over to the night form, kill enemies, you will still gain the damage stored, switch back over to day form, nuke the enemies, recast, rinse and repeat. This is my favorite mod. On a quick note, where to farm Equinox? Deadass, just her base farm is terrible, like terrible. You will need to farm till Rigor on Uranus for both day and night parts, so it's 2 frames in 1. It's 6 parts in total. You are far better off farming the Prime version if you'd like to use her as soon as possible. Alright, that is a lot of info. I know. I am aware. But the trick with Equinox is to actually play her to get a feel for how this frame works. I struggled to get her until I actually played a few missions and then she made a lot more sense. On that note, there are so many ways you can play Equinox. You can go support, nuking, you can go both, you can focus on a first ability or third or fourth, you can focus on tanking. It is very difficult to choose. So what I'm going to do is lay out the different ways that you can play her and you can choose whichever one tickles your fancy. Playstyle number 1, which is focusing on support. Here we focus on her 4th ability as Mend in her night form, which is skirts. Remember, night is skirts, pants is day. Night form is mainly focused on support. So Mend constantly regen shields here. You then pair it with Pacify, which gives you 80% damage reduction. And then you can use Peaceful Provocation, which gives you 80% slow to enemies on top of that. And this augment also slows down enemy projectiles too. We then focus on strength, so we get more shields per kill, and we focus on a bit of range plus duration. Remember, Equinox has a lot of channel ability, so stacking duration lowers the drain, and increasing efficiency only lowers the energy cost on ability cost. For this playstyle, we can use any helmet we see fit on her first ability or her second ability if you know you're not going to put them to sleep, or you know you're not going to switch over to the other form. This is the build here. It's a base build that's quite comfortable with no helmets. If you'd like a helmet suggestion, Raw or maybe an armor stripping ability will be quite nice here. You can instead go for more range if you'd like for the ultimate support to your teammates. This is a steel pass setup. The arcanes are flexible. Arcane Aegis here will make you close to unkillable because you will have shields up pretty much all the time. And then Molt Augmented wouldn't be bad for increasing your shield per kill on her 4th. Moving on to playstyle number 2, which is offensive. Now we're going to be making use of Maim, which is the day form, pants. Now our job here is to stack up as much damage as possible, and then we have to armor strip, otherwise this ability doesn't do the damage shown. Remember, Maim's damage is affected by enemy defenses, so using Terrifier will work fantastically here for us. We focus on strength, range, and duration, the usual. But for this setup, I opted to use catalyzing shields with Breeze Respite, as we won't be making use of her night form much, so we will need to shield gate to survive. And Terrify is very expensive, so one cast is an easy overshield. You can subsume Terrify over her 1 or her 2, it depends on what you want. I did her 2nd because just in case things got bad, I could switch over to her night form, but I will probably be moving it over to her 1 and relying on shield gating. This is the build here, it's super fun to use. Remember, if you don't have the prime mods, use the normal variants and change the build according to your playstyle. Peaceful Provocation here for that extra strength is really nice too, and the arcanes are flexible. Now we move on to playstyle number 3, which is focusing on both forms. How we do that is with the energy transfer augment. It is at first a bit confusing, but once you get the hang of it, it is very powerful. So again, we go for the same stats. For all Equinox builds, we pretty much focus on the exact same stats. We then make use of energy transfer, which allows us to cast Maim. We then switch to our night form, keep killing enemies, building up the damage on Maim, which is on the day side, while still having Mend active now because we switched over to night, which means you'll be gaining shields for you and your allies and having damage reduction. When you have enough damage stored up, you can armor strip really quickly with a helmet ability, switch back to day form, press forward to nuke all of your enemies with millions of damage, recast Maim, and then switch back to night form to tank again. We then also use Peaceful Provocation so we can make use of extra strength or extra slow. You can see how strong this is when you utilize this correctly. Just rinse and repeat this method and you will have some really good damage and tanking capabilities. This is the build we run here for this specific playstyle. I haven't subsumed it yet, but you can put an armor stripping ability over your second. We run both augments here as well. Arcanes are flexible, but consider using Molt Augmented. Playstyle number 4, which is tanking, focusing on a lot of strength, making use of her night form so you gain an insane amount of shields per kill and using adaptation. I'm not going to speak much about this because, well, the builds are pretty much very similar with some maybe minor adjustments, but here is the build for that type of playstyle. Then we move on to playstyle number 5, which is focusing on rest and rage. Here we focus on her second ability with the augment Calm and Frenzy, which will spread the effects to other enemies. We can also use energy transfer with the setup so we can make use of both buffs. So here we can spread sleep and damage vulnerability at the same time, but we will need to focus on more range here for this to really work. Here is the build here. Then we move on to playstyle number 6, which is Spectre focused, and that is making use of the duality with energy transfer. Because you could swap out at will with energy transfer, allowing you to keep up Maim, you can constantly have a Spectre up with duality, because you're going to be swapping forms often. However, you need a few Archon Shards for a duration increase. Here is the build here that you can use. Speaking of Archon Shards, the best is definitely casting speed with Equinox. She lacks casting speed, so it's a huge help to her. And then duration shards are a huge bonus to help her lowering the drain of her channeled abilities. For the baby tenors, all of you newbies out there, Equinox is a decent frame for star charge. She just struggles with energy sustain. So you want to focus on the same stats but with more basic mods. Any aura you have available, focus on duration to lower your drain. Here I use Transient Fortitude, but if you get your hands on Umbral and Tensify, use that instead so you have higher duration. Or you could just drop Transient Fortitude entirely and focus on more duration and range. That will work too. If you can, get your hands on Peaceful Provocation as fast as you can, and that is the build for the newer players. Obviously you don't have all the mods, so just build what you can and get the mods as you go along. Refer to the playstyle section of this video for you to understand how to play her. One more thing that I want to talk about is Equinox's abilities actually stack. So in theory, if you have one Equinox focusing on night form giving everyone shields and another focusing on Maim to nuke everything, you can have quite a deadly combo. You can get really creative with the synergy by utilizing different augments and focus points. And that is Equinox explained. Use weapons that can kill fast, have high fire rate, and also just some AoE weapons or anything like that so you can gain your shields as fast as possible for Mend. Just know this, if she seems confusing, just know that her third and her fourth are most important for both night and day. Refer to the ability section when you get her and play a few missions, she will then make a lot more sense. Be sure to prime enemies with viral so that you can armor strip them and do millions of damage. I'm not too sure, but I think Equinox could have infinite scaling with Maim, her fourth ability. Let me know in the comments below if you play Equinox and if you enjoy her. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. I'll see you guys in the next one. As always, a quick thank you for all of the members on my channel. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot.